Welcome to The Explainer. When most of us hear the name Confucius, we probably think of some quote we saw in a fortune cookie. Well, today we're going to crack open his actual teachings, the Analects, and go way deeper to find his practical guide on what it really means to be a person of character. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at how Confucius judged people, because it's not what you'd expect. Then we'll explore this ultimate virtue he called benevolence. After that, we'll walk the path of his ideal person, the gentleman. Then we'll get into why he trusted actions way more than words. And we'll wrap it all up with what Confucius himself really wanted out of life. So let's kick things off with a question that is just as relevant today as it was 2,500 years ago. How in the world do you actually get a good read on someone's character? Now just pause and think about this. Confucius is recommending a guy for marriage who is in jail. I mean, talk about a major red flag, right? But Confucius just brushes it aside. Why? Because he knew the man was innocent. The situation was bad, but the man's character was good. And for Confucius, that's all that mattered. And this right here is a perfect example of his thinking in action. On one hand, you have a guy who's in jail, but is morally innocent. On the other, you have a guy who was smart enough to stay out of trouble during a corrupt time. And Confucius approved of them both, giving his daughter to one and his niece to the other. The big takeaway? He judged the person, not their circumstances. Okay, so let's move on to the absolute pinnacle of Confucian thought, this idea of benevolence, or Ren. This was the Mount Everest of virtues for him, a quality so profound that he basically never said anyone actually had it, not even his best and brightest students. And someone pretty much asked him this exact question. They brought up 3 of his most talented followers, guys who could run armies and cities, and asked, are they benevolent? Their skills were off the charts, but Confucius's answers, well, they tell you everything. So, first up is Tsulu, his most loyal, brave, right-hand man, the kind of guy you'd trust to command an entire army. Confucius agrees, yep, he can do the job, but is he benevolent? I can't say. Okay, next up, Shu, a super skilled administrator who could run a big city, no problem. He's totally competent, gets things done. But is he benevolent? Again, the master says, I cannot say. And finally, there's Qi, the smooth talker, the brilliant diplomat. You'd think his people skills would count for something, right? Wrong. Talented? Absolutely. Benevolent? I cannot say. So what is going on here? It all boils down to one absolutely crucial idea. For Confucius, competence is not character. Benevolence isn't about what you can do. It's about who you are. It's a deep internal moral goodness, not just a set of external skills. All right, so if benevolence is this almost unreachable destination, how do you even begin to get there? Well, Confucius lays out a path. It's the path of the gentleman, or the junsi, his blueprint for the ideal person. And that path starts with humility, a very specific kind of intellectual humility. Someone asked Confucius why an official was given the posthumous name Wen, which means cultured. Confucius didn't list the guy's accomplishments. He pointed to his attitude. He loved to learn, and this is the key part. He wasn't too proud to ask for advice from people beneath him. He also gave a pretty clear checklist for what this ideal person looks like in action. He held up this official Tsuchan as a great example because he nailed 4 key areas. He was respectful in his private life, loyal in his public service, generous to the people he governed, and fair in how he managed them. It's a complete 360-degree picture of integrity. And, walking this path means you have to be really self-aware. Confucius called Hui his best student, a guy so brilliant he could hear one idea and instantly grasp 10 others. But then you have this exchange with another student, Su Kang, who admits, when I hear one thing, I only get 2. And Confucius doesn't put him down, he agrees with him. It shows that knowing your own limits is a virtue itself. And really, this is what it all comes back to. Confucius says, look, in any small town, you can find people as honest and good as me. But the thing that truly makes a difference, the thing that sets the gentleman apart, isn't some natural-born talent. It's a relentless, burning desire to learn. So, that constant drive for self-improvement leads us straight into another massive theme in the Analects. Confucius's profound distrust of fancy words and his laser focus on what people actually do. He saw being a smooth talker not as a gift, but as a liability. When one student was described as being a good person but not a great speaker, Confucius defended him, basically saying, "Who needs a silver tongue? Being quick with a comeback just makes you a lot of enemies." And wow, he could be absolutely savage about this. He once found a student named Tai Yu napping during the day, and he just let him have it with this incredible insult. He's basically saying the guy's character is so lazy and decayed that he's useless. You can't build anything with rotten material. But this wasn't just a random outburst. This one incident with his lazy student actually caused Confucius to change his entire philosophy. He says it himself, because of Tai Yu, I've had to change my method. I used to listen to what people said and trust them. Now I listen to what they say and then I go watch what they do. Actions, not words. And this really gets to the core of what he despised: fakeness. The things he found truly shameful were all about that gap between how things look and how they really are. Cunning words, a fake smile, being way too subservient, or pretending to be someone's friend while secretly hating them. He couldn't stand it. All of this builds to this one really beautiful, revealing moment in the text, where Confucius lets us see his own personal ambition and how different it was from everyone else's. So he asks his students, "What is it you've set your heart on?" Zhu Lu says he wants to be generous. Yan Yuan, the star pupil, says he wants to be humble. Both really noble goals, focused on personal virtue. And then they ask Confucius, "Master, what about you?" And his wish isn't about himself at all. It's just simple, humble, and completely focused on others. He wants to bring peace and comfort to everyone, the old, his friends, and the young. So what's the big takeaway here? For Confucius, character isn't some trophy you win. It's not a skill you master. It's a journey, a path you have to walk every single day, fueled by that constant desire to learn and a deep commitment to let your actions, not your words, do the talking. So we'll leave you with this final kind of mind-blowing thought. One of his students brought up the golden rule. Don't do to others what you don't want done to you. And Confucius told him flatly, that is quite beyond you. Now think about that. If he thought this basic principle of empathy was a nearly impossible standard for his best and brightest, where does that leave the rest of us on our own path to good character?